It all started on a quiet Tuesday morning in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, sun shining, birds chirping, and the local mailman doing his usual rounds. But things took a wild turn when one woman, known by the neighbors as the self-appointed enforcer of HOA rules, let's just call her Karen, spotted a man in a USPS uniform lingering near her front yard. She didn't recognize him, and in her mind, that was all the reason she needed to act. This wasn't just any ordinary HOA complaint about trash cans left out or a mailbox being slightly crooked. No, Karen believed this so-called mailman was up to something suspicious. She'd been on edge lately, convinced her community was being watched or infiltrated by someone trying to catch her slipping on HOA regulations. So when she saw the unfamiliar face wearing postal blue, she didn't ask questions, she confronted. What happened next left the entire neighborhood shocked. Without warning, Karen stormed outside, yelling accusations and demanding answers. The man tried to calm her down, explaining he was just doing his job, but she wasn't buying it. In a moment of panic, or power, she reached into her purse and pulled out a stun gun. Before anyone could intervene, she pressed the trigger. But here's the twist she never saw coming. The man she just tasted, he wasn't just a regular mail carrier. He was an undercover inspector general from the U.S. Postal Service, conducting a quiet audit of mail delivery in the area. Trained, authorized, and very much part of the federal system, Karen's impulsive decision to go full HOA security officer mode didn't just cause chaos. It set off a chain reaction that brought in federal agents, sparked a formal investigation, and turned her quiet street into a headline. So what happened after the shock, literally, wore off? Did Karen realize who she had just tangled with? And what did the inspector do next? Stick around, because things are just getting started. Turns out, Karen had been watching her neighborhood like a hawk for weeks. Some say she barely slept. She'd become obsessed with enforcing every single HOA rule, even the ones no one really cared about, like grass height or holiday decorations staying up too long. And while most neighbors just rolled their eyes and tried to stay out of her way, this time was different. Because when she spotted the unfamiliar mailman that morning, something in her snapped. She claimed she had seen him before, wandering a few blocks over, pretending to deliver mail. In her mind, she wasn't attacking a federal officer. She thought she was stopping a criminal. But what she didn't know was that the Postal Inspector General had been quietly assigned to the area after complaints about missing packages and delayed deliveries. The agency had sent him undercover in a real USPS uniform to observe routes, monitor employee behavior, and gather information without tipping anyone off. It's a routine audit in many neighborhoods. But this time, it was anything but routine. As soon as Karen made contact, the inspector's bodycam, hidden under his jacket, recorded everything, her accusations, her refusal to listen, and yes, even the moment she pulled the stun device. He hadn't expected trouble, but he had protocol for moments like this. What followed wasn't a physical struggle, but something more intense. A scene that caught the attention of neighbors, peeking through blinds and ring cameras, silently capturing it all. Word spread fast. By the afternoon, federal vehicles were parked on the street, quiet but present. Agents were going door to door, asking questions. And Karen? She stayed inside, blinds drawn, lights off. No apology, no explanation. Neighbors were divided. Some said she overreacted, fueled by paranoia and her obsession with control. Others whispered that she might have known more than anyone realized. Maybe she wasn't entirely wrong to be suspicious. Maybe this mailman wasn't who he claimed to be after all. Was he really just there for a routine inspection, or was something bigger going on? That's when the real questions started, and things took an even darker turn. Over the next few days, the neighborhood was buzzing. Whispers at the mailbox, texts in the group chat, doorbell cam footage passed around like wildfire. No one had ever seen anything like it. Karen, the same woman who once issued a written warning over a neighbor's garden gnome, had now gotten herself tangled in what some were calling a federal situation. But here's where things got even stranger. Nobody really knew what happened to the mailman after the incident. One moment he was there, conscious but shaken, radialing something into a device clipped under his shirt, and the next, he was gone. No ambulance. No obvious signs of injury, just silence. The HOA board scrambled to get in front of it, calling an emergency meeting, but of course Karen didn't show. Some speculated she was already facing charges. Others thought she had lawyered up. But the truth? She was still home, inside, watching. Her blinds would twitch sometimes when someone walked by, but otherwise, she'd vanished from public life. Meanwhile, neighbors began telling their own stories, times Karen had snapped, yelled, or threatened to report people over petty things. One young couple shared how she once followed their teenage son home, convinced he didn't live there. Another neighbor mentioned security cameras suddenly going missing last year, only to reappear months later. These stories, buried and forgotten, suddenly felt connected. Then came the theory that turned everything upside down. What if Karen wasn't just a paranoid HOA bully? What if she had reason to believe someone was watching her? An older resident claimed Karen once mentioned being part of a whistleblower case, something about misuse of HOA funds years ago that quietly disappeared. She had supposedly handed over some documents, then stopped talking about it. Could that be why she was always on edge? Was she actually the target, and not the threat? At the same time, strange things started happening. A black SUV parked across from Karen's house for hours with someone sitting inside. Her Wi-Fi went out mysteriously. One neighbor even claimed she saw someone trying to access Karen's trash at 3 a.m. This wasn't just a bizarre HOA meltdown anymore. Something deeper was brewing, and no one could agree on who was lying or who was in real danger. By the end of the week, the neighborhood didn't feel like a neighborhood anymore. It felt like the set of a crime drama. Quiet streets, suspicious glances, and everyone wondering who might be next to get a knock on the door. That black SUV, still there. Different drivers, always sitting alone, pretending not to watch. Karen hadn't stepped outside once, but her porch lights stayed on all night, and neighbors swore they saw shadows moving inside her house at odd hours. Some even claimed they heard loud whispering coming from the backyard around 2 a.m., though no one was brave enough to check. Then, something changed. One of the residents, Tom, a retired cop who mostly kept to himself, said he'd had enough of the speculation. He went to speak with Karen directly. He knocked. No answer. Knocked again, louder. Then a voice, Karen's, but shaky, low, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't open the door. She just said, "They're not who they say they are, none of them." Before Tom could ask what she meant, there was silence. That same day, 2 men in suits, no badges shown, no names given, went house to house asking subtle questions. Not about the stun gun or the mailman, but about Karen's behavior over the past year. Had she ever said anything odd? Mentioned classified documents? Made threats? It didn't sit right. Why would federal investigators be so interested in her mental state, unless there was something they weren't telling the public? Then came the package. Delivered to the wrong house, meant for Karen, but dropped on Tom's porch by mistake. No return address, plain brown wrapping, but it was heavy, and inside, according to Tom, it was filled with files, old HOA meeting transcripts, scanned receipts, even internal emails. Stuff no ordinary resident should ever have access to. Stuff that might have backed up Karen's old claims about financial misconduct and shady contractor deals. But before Tom could bring it to light, the package vanished. 1 minute it was locked in his garage. The next, the lock was cut, and it was gone. Now the whole neighborhood is holding its breath. What's really going on behind the curtain of this quiet suburban street? Who's pulling the strings, and who's about to face the consequences? Because something is coming, and no one feels safe anymore. Just when the neighborhood thought things couldn't get any weirder, a second twist came out of nowhere, and it changed everything. Late one night, around 3:17 a.m., A power outage swept through just one street, the block where Karen lived. Not the whole neighborhood, just those few houses in her row. Security cameras went dark. Phones stopped charging. Wi-Fi routers blinked out. For exactly 11 minutes, the entire block went completely silent. No lights, no sounds, nothing. And then, just as suddenly, power came back, like nothing happened. But the next morning, several residents noticed something odd. Tom's Ring doorbell system, the one that had been recording everything, had been completely wiped. Not just corrupted, erased, like it had never been installed. Even stranger, Karen's car was gone from her driveway. She hadn't been seen in days, but no one heard it start, no lights came on, and the gate camera that would have caught it, also dead during the outage. People were starting to panic. The HOA board issued a vague email saying everything was under control, but there were no real answers. And then came the second shock, an official notice posted on every door in the community. The mailman, the one Karen had confronted, wasn't in any USPS database. No employment records, no inspector general files, nothing. According to the Postal Service, no undercover audit had been scheduled in that area, which meant whoever Karen stunned that day wasn't with them. Now the story flipped. Was Karen right all along? Had she actually uncovered something no one was supposed to see? If that guy wasn't a federal inspector, then who was he? And why did he disappear just as fast as he showed up? That one detail sent the whole neighborhood into full-blown paranoia. Cameras were being reinstalled. People were forming late-night watch groups. Even Tom, who used to call all this Karen drama, started keeping a flashlight by the door and locking his garage twice. What started as a wild HOA confrontation now felt like a cover-up, one with layers no one was prepared for, and with Karen missing, the package stolen, and no trace of the fake mailman, the real story was only just beginning to unravel. It all came to a head 1 week after the blackout. A white van with government plates rolled into the neighborhood just after sunrise. This time, there was no pretending. Real agents stepped out, badges shown, full uniforms, marked vehicles. They went straight to Karen's house. But when they knocked, there was no answer. After 10 minutes, they entered using a warrant. What they found inside sent chills through even the most skeptical neighbors. Karen was there, alive, alone, sitting in a chair, surrounded by printed documents, old photos, even voice recordings labeled with dates and initials. She didn't resist, didn't speak, just pointed to a file on the table. One agent picked it up, flipped through it, and immediately made a call. That file, it linked a high-ranking official in the HOA's management company to a string of shady construction deals, fake invoices, double billing, and even bribery involving local contractors. Karen had been gathering evidence for years, quietly, and she'd been right. The entire HOA leadership had been covering it up, and she was the only one who dared to dig deeper. But the biggest shock came next. Security footage from a backup cloud server, one no one knew Tom had since surfaced. It clearly showed the mailman speaking into a hidden mic, but not using any federal code or standard procedure. He wasn't auditing anything. He was looking for something. At one point, he slipped into Karen's yard and lifted a loose brick from her garden wall. Tucked inside, a flash drive, but he never made it out with it. That same flash drive had been in the package delivered to Tom, later stolen. So who was he? The final twist landed hard. He was a private contractor, hired not by USPS or the government, but by the HOA's own legal team. A fixer, meant to recover or destroy anything that could expose the fraud. Karen hadn't stunned a federal agent. She'd stopped a hired operative. The inspector story had been a lie from the start, used to discredit her in case things went public. As for Karen, she handed over everything. The agents escorted her out quietly, not as a criminal, but as a whistleblower. The HOA board was suspended, several members arrested, and the neighborhood slowly began to exhale. But just when people thought it was over, one last file was discovered, buried at the bottom of Karen's folder, marked only with a date 3 years earlier and the initials TM. Tom's eyes widened when he saw it, and just like that, the neighborhood realized there was still one more secret left to tell. The file marked TM turned out to be the missing piece. It was a series of email exchanges between Tom and the HOA board from years ago, back when he questioned where community maintenance funds were going. At the time, he'd let it go, assuming it was just poor bookkeeping. But Karen hadn't. She quietly kept digging, saving everything Tom had uncovered and tying it to what she found later. It turns out Tom's early complaints had sparked her investigation in the first place. He just never knew. After everything came out, the neighborhood changed. Karen, once seen as just another overbearing HOA enforcer, was finally understood. She wasn't crazy. She was cautious. Maybe too intense. Maybe not always easy to deal with. But she was trying to protect something bigger than herself. Once the charges against her were dropped and the truth went public, neighbors started showing up at her door. Not with pitchforks this time, but with flowers, with apologies, with thanks. Tom became an unlikely hero too. He helped the agents connect the final dots and eventually joined the interim HOA board to help rebuild trust. The shady contracts were cancelled, the old board members faced prosecution, and the community finally started feeling like a neighborhood again, not a surveillance zone.